Good evening, dear listener. Find a cozy spot, maybe adjust your blanket just a little, pour yourself a calming cup of tea, and gently rest your head on your pillow. Take a deep breath in, feel the air fill your lungs, and exhale slowly, letting the outside world fade away for a moment. Tonight, I invite you to settle into a quiet space where your mind can drift, where stories whisper softly in the background, ready to lull you into a gentle sleep. Now imagine a world where beauty isn't just about skincare routines or perfect selfies, but about rituals so strange, so elaborate, they could make your own morning routine seem downright mundane. Picture a place where the mirror isn't just glass, but a portal to secrets buried in time, secrets that if you saw them today might make you shudder with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. As you settle deeper into your seat of comfort, think of this story as a slow walk through shadows and whispers, like wandering through a fog thick enough to hide the sun, or hearing faint echoes of a language long gone, carried by the breeze. It's a journey that might make you smile at how far we've come, or shudder at what we've left behind. And as your eyes grow heavy and the night deepens, soon you'll open them not in your bedroom, but in a world where the air is tinged with ancient herbs, secrets, and perhaps a hint of the strange, where your role will be far more curious, far more eerie than anything you've known before. The air around you feels thick and humid, carrying a strange mixture of scents, faintly burnt herbs, a sharp tang of vinegar, and something else, less identifiable, perhaps the scent of sweat, mingled with age-old spices. Your skin prickles as you shift, feeling the coarse texture of a woven linen shroud draped over your body. A fabric rougher than any cotton you've known, rough enough to scrape your fingertips as you move. The ground beneath you is uneven, a patchwork of cracked clay tiles and uneven stones that shift with every step you take. Your toes find no soft carpet or cozy rug, just the harsh, unyielding surface that echoes every movement. You instinctively reach out and touch the wall, cool, rough limestone, chipped and worn, bearing the faint imprint of ancient tools. The flickering glow of oil lamps casts dancing shadows, turning the room into a shifting maze of light and darkness. Somewhere nearby, you hear the faint clang of metal on stone, the distant call of a hawk, and the muffled murmur of voices, perhaps merchants haggling or children playing in the street. Your ears catch the distant sound of a sistrum shaking, a high-pitched chime that seems to echo softly through the corridors, blending with the low groans of someone ill. An unsettling symphony of life and suffering. The scent of burning herbs grows stronger, mingling with the smoky aroma of a brazier nearby, where resins hiss and release fragrant smoke that seems to cling to the air like a thick fog. The smell of sweat, old linen, and something sharper, perhaps vinegar or spoiled meat, wafts into your nostrils, reminding you that this is a place where comfort is scarce and survival takes precedence over hygiene. Your fingers brush against a coarse, stiff cloth. Your clothing, perhaps, or a woven apron smeared with dust and traces of ointments. It's abrasive, the fabric rough against your skin, much more so than the soft, breathable fabrics you're used to. You take a tentative sip from a clay cup nearby, water that tastes of minerals and something else, perhaps remnants of dirt or old clay, leaving a strange, metallic aftertaste. The bread you gnaw on is stale, crunchy in your mouth, and the wine, if you can call it that, has an acrid edge that stings your throat. And yet, amid this chaos of textures and smells, a strange emotion stirs within you, a mixture of bewilderment, discomfort, and an almost ironic sense of amusement. Your idea of a rough morning used to be missing your phone charger or spilling coffee on your shirt. Here, it's realizing that your mask, intended to protect you, smells worse than the patients you're supposed to care for. It's a bizarre twist of fate, your modern expectations turned upside down by the unfamiliar reality of this ancient world. Now you find yourself rising unsteadily, your bare feet touching the cold, uneven floor. You reach out and grab a simple linen tunic, rough and stiff, and pull it over your head. As you do, you see yourself reflected in a small, tarnished bronze mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. Your reflection stares back, eyes wide, a little wary, wearing a strange mask made of leather and painted with symbols you can't quite recognize. It's heavy and awkward, but here it's part of your new role, your new identity in this strange place. With a cautious breath, you step toward a door carved from dark wood, its surface marked with symbols and hieroglyphs that seem to pulse faintly in the dim light. As you push it open, the sounds of the bustling city spill into the room, shouts of merchants hawking their wares, the clatter of carts rolling over cobblestones, children's laughter mixed with the sharp cries of street vendors. Outside you see a vibrant, chaotic scene, people in linen robes and colorful headdresses, some limping or carrying bundles, others hurrying with purpose. Soldiers march past, their feet pounding the earth in unison, their weapons gleaming dully in the sunlight. Your presence draws curious glances, some respectful, others wary. The villagers' eyes flicker with a mixture of awe and fear, as if your strange attire and unfamiliar bearing mark you as someone from a different world, an outsider, a healer, a stranger. You notice a man with a long, hooked nose staring at you intently, whispering to a companion, while children giggle and point, their small hands clutching at their mother's skirts. As you look around this lively scene, it becomes clear you are no longer in your familiar time or space. This is a place rooted in rituals, ancient beliefs and customs so different from your own that even the simplest act, crossing the street, speaking to a stranger, feels like stepping into a different universe. Everything here is layered with meaning, with tradition, with a sense of purpose that stretches back thousands of years. And as you take it all in, the smells, sounds, textures, the realization dawns, to truly understand where you've just woken up, you need to step back and see the bigger picture, the world that shaped this life. But for now, just breathe in the chaos, the history, the strange beauty, and prepare to journey deeper into a world where beauty routines are more ritual than skincare, more magic than makeup. You find yourself living in a time where the world is still ruled by the shadows of ancient gods and mighty pharaohs, an era that to your modern sensibilities feels both distant and strangely alive. The place you've woken up in is part of a vast sun-baked empire, perhaps during the height of the New Kingdom, or maybe even earlier, when Egypt's grandeur stretched along the Nile, its pyramids piercing the sky like silent guardians of eternity. It's a time when kings were believed to be divine, their authority rooted not just in law, but in the very breath of the gods themselves. You're in a society structured like a vast pyramid, with nobles and priests at the top, wielding power that seemed as endless as the desert sun, while the common folk, the farmers, artisans, and laborers, toiled beneath, often with little more than hope and superstition to carry them through the day. The social divide is stark. If you're rich enough to adorn yourself with fine linen, gold jewelry, and painted eyes, you might be living in luxury, surrounded by carved furniture and fragrant oils. But if not, you're more likely to be scraping a living on the muddy banks of the Nile, your days filled with repetitive work, your only luxury a shared loaf of coarse bread and water drawn from the river's murky depths. And here, in this world, survival often hinges on luck, on who your family is, and on the favor of the gods. or the priests who claim to speak for them. The environment around you is a bustling mix of city and countryside, each with its own chaotic rhythm. Imagine a marketplace more lively than any Black Friday, but with more pigs than people, and a cacophony of voices shouting, bargaining, and hawking everything from date palms to scarab amulets. The streets are paved with uneven stones that bounce beneath your feet, lined with mud brick houses whose walls are painted with vivid colors that have faded over centuries but still hint at their former vibrancy. Camels and donkeys trudge past, their bells jangling in the dry air, while street performers and vendors add to the sensory overload, some singing, others droning out prayers or reciting poetry that sounds like a song from another world. The aroma of roasting meat mingles with the scent of freshly baked bread and the pungent smoke of incense used in religious rituals. You might catch the faint whiff of spilled wine or the sharp tang of vinegar as merchants haggle over their wares or priests prepare offerings for the temple. Life here moves at a rhythm both relentless and predictable. The day often begins with the crowing of a rooster or the tolling of temple bells, if you're lucky enough to be near one, and then it's straight into a day of labor. Farmers plow the fields with oxen, their hands rough and calloused, while artisans shape stone, carve wood, or weave textiles with a patience that seems almost meditative. For the wealthier, the mornings might be spent in ceremonies or receiving visitors, while others spend hours bathing in the Nile, although, in this era, bathing was a suspicious act, almost like announcing to your neighbors that you were up to something shady. Taking a wash was more akin to a secret ritual, often done behind closed doors or in the privacy of a small courtyard, because cleanliness was as much about spiritual purity as it was about hygiene. Your idea of a morning routine, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, maybe checking your phone, would be utterly foreign here. Instead, your day begins with a scrape of a rough stone against your teeth, a dab of scented oil on your skin, and perhaps a quick prayer to the sun god Ra asking for favor. Forget gyms. Carrying buckets of water from the river or hauling firewood was the ancient Egyptian equivalent of CrossFit, demanding strength and endurance, with the added thrill of not knowing whether you'd slip on the muddy bank or get a splinter from the wood. Your modern frustrations, trying to find a parking spot or waiting for a slow Wi-Fi connection, pale in comparison to the daily grind of a society where even the simplest act required effort, patience, and a little bit of divine luck. And then there's the political landscape, vast, intricate, and often unpredictable. Egypt was a land of powerful pharaohs, divine rulers who claimed to be the earthly embodiment of gods, overseeing a realm that was as much a spiritual domain as it was a political one. Their rule was maintained through a complex bureaucracy of scribes, priests, and officials, all woven into a web of rituals, taxes, and offerings that kept the machinery of the state humming. War was common, with armies marching across deserts, defending borders, or conquering new lands, sometimes with the help of chariots and spears, other times by the sheer force of religious authority. Invasions and rebellions flickered across the horizon like storm clouds, threatening the stability of this ancient civilization. Meanwhile, superstitions and religious beliefs permeated every aspect of daily life. People believed the gods could influence everything from the flooding of the Nile to the outcome of a wedding or the health of a newborn. Some peculiar beliefs might make you smile, like the idea that carrying a handful of onions in your pocket could ward off the plague, or that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar was a safer bet than keeping your distance from sick neighbors. Masks, but make it medieval, were common, leather, and painted with symbols that looked as if they belonged in a tomb, not a street. The whole society was a tapestry of the absurd, the sacred, and the practical, woven together with threads of superstition, and divine authority. Now that you understand where you've landed inside a world built on rituals, gods, and hierarchies, let's zoom in closer to see what daily life truly looked like in this ancient land. Because, as fascinating as the grand halls and temples might be, it's the small, strange, and often shocking routines of everyday existence that reveal the real soul of this civilization. And so prepare yourself. Soon we'll descend from the grand macrocosm of empires and kings to the intimate microcosm of homes, baths, and beauty routines, rituals so peculiar, so unnerving by today's standards, that they might just make your modern beauty regimen look like a weekend spa day. You wake up slowly, the first light filtering through the small, narrow window of your humble dwelling. As your eyelids flutter open, a faint rustling noise reaches your ears. The sound of a cloth being moved, or perhaps a distant goat bleating outside. You stretch your limbs, feeling the coarse fibers of your linen tunic against your skin, rougher than any t-shirt you've ever known. Your muscles protest a little after the night's rest on a hard, wooden cot, the slats creaking softly beneath your weight. You sit up, groggy, and reach for the small basin of cold water on a nearby shelf, perhaps made of clay or carved from rough wood. Your hand dips into the basin, fingertips brushing against the surface, and you splash water onto your face. The sensation is sharp and bracing, like a splash of icy air delivered straight to your skin, waking you from the depths of sleep. You wipe your face with a rough, coarse towel, more like a woven rag than the plush towels of today, and grimace at how the fabric scratches your skin, as if you're trying to wipe away not just dirt, but the very day ahead. In this world, cleanliness isn't a matter of luxury or personal care, but a cautious act of ritual. The Egyptians believed that taking an actual bath was almost a betrayal, a sign of overindulgence or suspicion, like announcing to your neighbors that you were up to something secret. Instead, they relied on quick rinses, scented oils, and fragrant herbs to purify the air around them. You might have a small jar of perfumed ointments or dried herbs you burn to mask the smell of sweat and dirt, because frankly, soap wasn't a thing yet, and the idea of washing away every trace of your day with fragrant foam is centuries away. Forget your 10-step skincare routine. Here, survival is splashing some water and hoping the smell doesn't scare the neighbors into avoiding you altogether. Stepping into your modest home, you notice the walls are made of sun-dried mud bricks, darkened with age and smoke. The flickering glow of a small fire or oil lamp casts dancing shadows across the room, where simple clay pots sit on shelves, their surfaces rough and unpolished. The air is tinged with the faint aroma of burning wood, dried herbs, and the lingering scent of last night's cooking, maybe a stew of lentils and onions, or some dried fish that's lost its original freshness. The sounds of the household are a gentle hum, clattering pottery, the crackle of burning embers, the faint snore of a distant family member. Your clothes, heavy linen or wool, hang limply from a hook, their coarse fibers itchy against your skin. The fabric is stiff, heavy, and feels like you're being hugged by 1,000 tiny, prickly hedgehogs. Your body reacts with a series of tiny coiled discomforts, an itch here, a stiff joint there, reminding you that comfort is a modern luxury, not a given. You pull on your rough tunic, the fabric stiff and unyielding, and slip into your basic sandals, perhaps made from woven reeds or hardened leather. Walking feels like a slow, deliberate effort, your feet pressing down on uneven, dusty floors that creak beneath each step. The very act of dressing is a ritual, adjusting the heavy fabric, smoothing out the wrinkles, trying not to scratch your neck on the coarse weave. Your idea of uncomfortable clothing might be a scratchy sweater or tight jeans, but here it's wool that feels like hugging a hedgehog, and sandals that pinch your toes as if mocking your modern comfort. Down the street, the day begins with a flurry of activity. You step outside into the bustling village or town, an environment more chaotic than a busy market on Black Friday, but with far more pigs than people. The streets are narrow, packed with people, donkeys, and carts, all moving in a slow, deliberate chaos. Merchants shout their prices in a high-pitched, nasal tone, hawking everything from dates and figs to scarabs and linen. Children dart between legs, squealing and giggling, their small feet kicking up dust. Men and women haggle over goods, their voices rising and falling in a rhythmic dance of bargaining. The smell of fresh bread mixes with the aroma of spices and the sweat of laborers, an olfactory tapestry so rich it could give a modern coffee shop a run for its money, but with a lot more dirt and less caffeine. The marketplace noise is deafening, clattering, shouting, the clop of donkeys' hooves, and the occasional bray of a goat. It's a place where patience is as vital as a good deal, and where a simple transaction can take longer than a modern grocery run, with each vendor adding their own theatrical flair to their sales pitch. Your stomach rumbles with the first meal of the day, a humble affair. You chew on a piece of coarse bread, as hard as a brick, that crackles audibly between your teeth, much like biting into a piece of ancient concrete. Perhaps you nibble on a piece of aged cheese, its texture crumbly and flavor pungent, more pungent than a gym locker room after a summer workout. The broth, if you're lucky enough to have some, is a thin, salty soup, more water with a splash of flavor than a hearty meal, a far cry from the frothy, sweet coffees and smoothies of today. Eating here is a slow act of endurance, chewing deliberately, tasting every grain of salt, feeling the grit of the bread between your teeth. Modern mornings might involve a quick sip of coffee and a cereal bowl, but here it's a ritual of patience and resilience, a reminder that sustenance was a daily challenge, not a convenience. As you sit to eat, you notice small objects, amulets, tiny charms, or amulets carved from stone, placed carefully nearby. Some are believed to ward off diseases or evil spirits. Others are simply talismans, worn or kept close for good luck. Before leaving, you might recite a prayer or burn some incense, smoke curling upward like ghostly breath, filling the air with a sweet, pungent aroma that's both a ritual and a defense. In this world, hygiene isn't just about cleanliness, but about spiritual purity, and every act, whether washing, anointing, or praying, follows a strict, often bizarre, set of customs. You might even have a small figurine or amulet strapped to your arm or neck designed to repel illness, a sort of ancient version of a hand sanitizer, but with more mysticism and less science. Now, as you prepare to step outside again, your mind might be filled with a strange mix of admiration and disbelief. The routines here are so different from your own, so rooted in superstition, ritual, and necessity that they border on the surreal. Irony is inevitable. Your modern life, with all its comforts and conveniences, feels like a luxury compared to the daily grind of survival, hygiene, and superstition in this ancient land. You've navigated the early hours, rough fabrics, coarse waters, and strange rituals, and survived. But the real challenge still awaits, stepping beyond your home into the wider world where customs are even stranger, and beauty routines are a matter of magic, myth, and ancient superstition. And so, with these images in mind, you're ready to move forward, aware that beneath the surface of this ancient civilization lies a world of routines so bizarre, so fascinating, that your modern hygiene habits might just seem a little too sterile by comparison. The air is thick with the scent of the early morning, dry, warm, and tinged with the faint aroma of baking bread, livestock, and something more intangible, the scent of a community waking up, The sky above is a dull grey or perhaps a hazy orange if the sun is just cresting the horizon, casting long shadows that stretch across the busy streets. The breeze is dry and hot, carrying with it the murmurs of people stirring, merchants arranging their stalls, children chasing each other, and elders exchanging gossip in hurried whispers. You already carry the objects that mark your role, perhaps a leather bag filled with herbs, a mask with a long curved beak, and a staff carved with symbols. These are your tools, your symbols of purpose, and they feel familiar in your grasp, heavy with meaning and history. As you move into the community, your role becomes clearer. You are here to serve, to protect, perhaps to diagnose or treat. Your presence is both commanding and cautious, and the people around you respond accordingly. Children stare at you, half curious, half terrified, eyes wide, clutching their mother's skirts, whispering about your strange mask and the odd tools hanging from your belt. The merchants, busy with their daily grind, glance at you with a mixture of respect and wary suspicion, some nodding politely, others casting quick, sidelong glances. Soldiers, if present, respect your authority but also keep a safe distance, their hands resting on their weapons, ready for any sign of trouble. The religious figures, robed and serene, observe you with a quiet reverence, as if your purpose is intertwined with the divine order they uphold. Your job is clear: visit the sick, examine the afflicted, prescribe herbs, and burn objects that might harbor disease. Each task comes with its own sensory overload, the scent of burnt incense lingering in the air, the muffled sounds of coughing patients behind closed doors, the rough texture of linen bandages, and the sharp sting of herbal salves. You lift a patient's arm, feeling the heat radiating from their skin, and note the trembling in their limbs, symptoms that require your knowledge and intuition. You might dip your hand into a basin of cold water, feeling the shock of the chill seeping into your fingertips, or hold a cloth soaked in vinegar to a fevered brow, the acidity stinging slightly against your skin. Forget the modern office politics. Here, your challenges are more visceral. Your backlog isn't a pile of emails, it's a line of coughing patients, each with their own story of misery waiting outside your makeshift clinic. Your office isn't a sterile room, but a small, cluttered hut filled with jars of dried herbs, bones, and amulets. The air inside is thick with smoke from burning incense, mixed with the scent of damp straw and old leather. The walls are dark with soot and age, the surfaces rough, textured with the marks of countless hands and tools. Every object has a story: scarab amulets for protection, small clay figurines for healing, and strips of linen for binding wounds. Your clothing is heavy, coarse linen that sticks to your damp skin as the day warms up. The fabric feels like a second skin, rough, itchy, and unforgiving, much like trying to work in a wool sweater that's been through a sandstorm. Your feet are encased in stiff sandals, their soles worn thin, making each step a slow, deliberate effort. You might feel a twinge of discomfort, perhaps a blister, or an ache in your back from bending over too many patients. Your body reacts with the same stubborn resistance as the community around you: stiff joints, itchy skin, the ache of exertion. Your modern idea of comfortable footwear or breathable clothes seems utterly absurd here. Your wool feels like hugging a hedgehog, and your sandals are more torture devices than footwear. By mid-morning, the village or town is alive with activity. The marketplace is a riot of colours and sounds, clattering pots, shouting vendors, the squeal of pigs, and the rhythmic pounding of a baker's mortar. Merchants lay out their goods: dates, figs, jewelry, and textiles, while children dart through the crowds, giggling and squealing. The smell of baked bread and roasted spices fills the air, competing with the earthy scent of livestock and the sweat of laborers. You navigate through this chaos, your presence unmistakable, your staff tapping against the stones, your mask hiding your expression, your bag of herbs slung over your shoulder. People glance at you with a mixture of reverence and curiosity. Some cross themselves when they see your mask. Others whisper behind your back about the strange foreigner who seems to carry the very essence of the gods in his tools. You perform your duties with a mix of routine and ritual. You examine a patient, feeling the heat radiating from their skin as you press your fingers against their forehead, listening to the cough that rattles in their chest. You prepare herbal infusions, crushing dried leaves and roots, their earthy aroma filling your nostrils as you grind them between stones. You burn small bundles of incense, their smoky tendrils curling upward, believed to ward off evil spirits and purify the air. Sometimes you burn a cloth soaked in vinegar or aromatic oils, an act that feels both practical and superstitious, as if the very act of burning could rid the person of illness. Your interactions with others are punctuated by gestures, glances, and the occasional whispered prayer. Nobles and priests regard you with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Your role as healer or priest makes you both respected and feared. Servants observing your work step back cautiously, wary of your tools and the strange symbols painted on your mask. Soldiers watch you closely, their hands never far from their weapons, ready to intervene if your presence threatens the fragile order. Children, ever curious, sometimes sneak closer to stare at your tools, tiny fingers reaching out, eyes wide with wonder and a hint of fear. Behind every bustling market stall, every prayer whispered in the temple, there's a deeper layer, a collective anxiety rooted in superstition, in the belief that unseen forces lurk in the shadows waiting to strike. Some believe that carrying a small amulet can ward off disease. Others think that spitting 3 times before entering a house keeps evil spirits at bay. The very fabric of this society is woven with rituals and fears, each act, each object, each prayer, a shield against the chaos of the unseen world. And as you move through this complex web of social duties and spiritual practices, you realize that your role is more than just a healer. You're a guardian against the chaos, a conduit for divine power, and a living reminder that in this world, health, life, and safety are all precarious gifts granted by the gods, protected by rituals that seem strange, even terrifying, to your modern mind. But behind every busy market stall and every wary glance, there's a deeper fear that shapes this world, an ancient, persistent dread that whispers in every prayer, every sacrifice, every ritual. To understand why people look at you that way, you'll need to step into their beliefs and superstitions, because only then will you begin to grasp the true nature of this society, its routines, its fears, and the strange, sacred dance of life that keeps everything spinning in the shadow of eternity. As you walk through the narrow streets, you can feel the weight of fear hanging heavy in the air, like a thick fog that clings to your skin and seeps into your bones. It's everywhere, embedded in the way the townspeople cast nervous glances over their shoulders, whispering prayers in hurried, trembling voices as you pass. You sense it in the way mothers clutch their children close, shielding them from invisible threats, and in the hushed conversations of merchants about bad omens and the wrath of the gods. The fear is like the smoke rising from 1,000 distant chimneys, impossible to escape, and you breathe it in whether you want to or not. It's woven into the fabric of daily life, a silent, persistent presence that shapes every action, every thought. The marketplaces are filled with the sounds of hurried haggling, but beneath the chatter lies a darker undercurrent, an unspoken dread of disease, famine, or war. The streets are quiet at times, as if the very stones are holding their breath, and the distant toll of church bells or funeral horns punctuates the stillness, echoing like the tolling of a death knell. You see the churches packed with worshippers, votive candles flickering in the dim light, their flames trembling like fragile hopes amid the thick scent of incense. People cross themselves hurriedly, murmuring prayers under their breath, their eyes darting skyward or toward the ground as if seeking divine protection. The clergy, robed in their ornate vestments, led processions through the city, singing hymns that seemed to carry both comfort and warning. Their voices rise and fall in a melodic cadence, blending with the scent of burning incense that coils upward, filling the air with a sweet, pungent aroma, almost like a fragrant shield against the unseen evil lurking beyond. Today you might scroll through TikTok for a moment of distraction, but here people clutch their rosaries as if they were life jackets in a storm, symbols of their faith, their hope, and their desperate attempt to ward off the chaos that lurks just beyond sight. Superstitions are woven into every corner of this society, objects, rituals, and beliefs that promise protection amid the chaos. Amulets carved with symbols of gods or animals are pinned to clothing, hung in homes and buried in fields, each one believed to repel spirits or diseases. Some carry small pieces of herbs or dried plants, cloves, garlic, or thyme, believed to keep the miasma, that foul, corrupting air, at bay. Others wear charms inscribed with prayers, their surfaces worn smooth from constant contact, as if the very touch imbues them with power. You might see a child clutching a tiny statuette of a god, whispering a prayer to ward off evil spirits, or seeking protection from the bad air that everyone insists is the real cause of sickness. And then there are the bizarre remedies, like whipping oneself in the streets to earn divine mercy, or carrying a dead toad in your pocket, thought to absorb the poison of pestilence. It's the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. The community's collective fears create a web of rituals so intricate that even the most skeptical might find themselves wondering if these charms, chants, and offerings could somehow work. But behind all this, there's a deeper, more primal terror. The fear that the divine punishments are imminent, that diseases are divine curses, or that the gods themselves are angry, watching with wrathful eyes. People speak in hushed tones about the punishments for sins, the coming of plagues, and the punishment for heretics or those who defy tradition. The fear unites and divides the community at once. Lynchings and accusations arise from suspicion, as if the very fabric of society might unravel at any moment. A neighbor might be accused of witchcraft simply for suffering a bad harvest, or a merchant branded a heretic for questioning the god's will. Fugitives flee in the night, their shadows casting long, uncertain shapes as they escape the wrath of both man and divine. You, as a healer, find yourself caught in this web of anxieties. People regard you with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Some see your role as that of a divine intermediary, capable of curing or warding off evil. Others whisper behind your back, questioning whether your herbs and prayers are truly effective, or whether you're merely a quack, or worse, an accomplice to death. They look at you with wide eyes, some clutching a small charm or crossing themselves when you approach. An unspoken plea for protection, or perhaps an accusation cloaked in superstition. You might catch whispers. Is he really here to help, or does he bring the sickness himself? And in your mind, you realize that in this world, trust is as fragile as a brittle bone, easily shattered by fear. You learn strange, unsettling facts about their spiritual practices, like the belief that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, or that whipping oneself in the streets would earn divine mercy. It's an odd, morbid dance with death, a ritualistic act that somehow makes sense in the collective mind. The community's fears are like an invisible current, shaping every decision, every prayer, every sacrifice. It's a world where the divine and the mortal collide, where gods punish with plagues, and the only protection is faith, ritual, and a healthy dose of superstition. Fear here is like the smoke from 100 chimneys. You breathe it in whether you want to or not, and it colors your perception of everything around you. It's woven into the very air you breathe, whispering that danger is always nearby, lurking in the shadows of the unseen world. And yet, even amid this relentless tide of dread, people still cling to hope, nervous, fragile, but persistent. Because beyond the prayers and charms, there are bonds that keep life moving, fragile, human, and surprisingly familiar. And as you look around, sensing the collective heartbeat of this fearful society, you realize that understanding these fears isn't just about knowing their superstitions, it's about seeing how they survive, how they cling to life in a world always on the brink of chaos. Because, in the end, their fears are not just superstitions, they are the very fabric of their reality, shaping every prayer, every ritual, every moment of calm amid the storm. It's as if, in this world of dust, disease, and divine punishment, the true sanctuary isn't in the temples or the charms, it's in the simple act of sharing space, a hand on a shoulder, a whispered reassurance. Here, bonds are woven tightly, not just for warmth or survival, but for the fragile hope that somehow, together, they can withstand the chaos that lurks outside their doors. And even amidst the suspicion and the ever-present danger, you see how life persists in these small human connections, like the faint glow of a lamp in a dark room, a reminder that no matter how grim the world may seem, the spark of companionship still burns brightly. At home, the ties are even more vivid. Families are both a haven and a prison. Imagine a household where children run barefoot across uneven floors, their laughter muffled by the hum of conversation and the clatter of cooking. Forget Netflix family drama here. Your cousin might literally sleep on the floor 2 feet away from you every single night, sharing a space that's both sanctuary and confinement. Grandparents sit by the hearth, telling stories that have been passed down through generations, stories of gods and monsters, of ancestors who fought off spirits or survived plagues. These tales are the fabric of daily life, stitched into the very walls of their homes, binding everyone in a shared history that's as tight as the linen wrappings of a mummified body. Family is support, but also obligation. Each member a piece of a larger puzzle, expected to contribute, to endure, to carry the weight of tradition. You can feel the unspoken expectation in the way a mother silently hands her son a piece of bread, or how an elder's gaze lingers a little longer on a young woman, hinting at a future sealed by duty or desire. And yet, within that closeness, there's a subtle tension, an undercurrent of obligation that can feel like a chain. You see it in the way children are hurried along to learn their roles, their laughter tinged with the awareness that they are part of something bigger than themselves. The bonds are tender but firm, stitched together with the threads of duty, love, and fear of losing what little they have. It's a delicate dance, one moment warm and familiar, the next confining, as if the walls themselves are holding secrets as well as safety. Outside the household, friendship and solidarity flicker like faint sparks in the darkness. You witness neighbors helping each other with chores, trading bread for herbs, sharing a jug of beer during a festival, whispering advice under their breath as they work side by side. In some ways, these bonds are the lifelines of a community always on the edge, mutual aid in a world where disease can strike overnight, and trust is as fragile as a cracked clay pot. A woman might pass her neighbor a handful of dried figs, eyes darting to see if they're appreciated or questioned. A craftsman offers a secret recipe for a healing salve, knowing full well that knowledge is both a gift and a weapon. The camaraderie is real, yet cautious, like walking on a thin rope stretched across a chasm of suspicion. You can almost hear the whispers behind closed doors. Is she truly my friend, or is she waiting to see me fall? Romance, meanwhile, exists in stolen moments and fleeting glances. Imagine a young man sneaking into a shadowed alley, risking the scolding of elders just to catch a glimpse of a girl's smile or a hand briefly touching his. Promises of marriage are made over smoky cups of beer, the vows whispered amid the hum of festival music or the flickering light of oil lamps. Love here is bold yet fragile. Each embrace a gamble against the watchful eyes of gods and neighbors alike. Maybe a secret meeting is arranged behind a temple's columns, where the scent of incense still clings to their clothes and the faint sound of a lute drifts through the night. It's a world where a Tinder swipe might be replaced by a quick, knowing look across a crowded market. If the fiddle doesn't break, perhaps a dance can happen, if only for a moment, before the shadows of obligation swallow it whole. Social hierarchy shapes these relationships as surely as the Nile shapes the land. Nobles and merchants treat you with a mixture of reverence and disdain. Your status defines how much trust they give, how much deference they show. A noble might summon you to their lavish estate, expecting your healing skills, but also watching you with suspicion. Do you serve the gods or the devil? A priest might nod in approval, recognizing your role as a conduit of divine power, but the common folk see you as both protector and potential threat. You are respected by some, feared by others, never fully trusted, always a little outside the circle of ordinary life. You sense their unspoken judgments in every glance, whether you're just another healer or a potential agent of divine punishment. Sometimes you catch whispers of rivalries, disputes over land, accusations of witchcraft, jealousies that boil beneath the surface of communal harmony. An argument over a shared water source can escalate into a bitter feud, and a rumor of sorcery can turn neighbors into enemies overnight. And amidst this web of relationships, there are moments of collective gathering, festivals, religious processions, funerals, and weddings that pulse with life and color. You find yourself in the midst of these events, clothed in vibrant fabrics, surrounded by the scent of fresh bread, roasted meats, and the sweet aroma of flowering incense. The air vibrates with the sound of flutes and drums as people dance and sing, their voices rising in a chorus that echoes through the streets. You feel the cool touch of a hand in yours during a farewell or a blessing, the faint prick of a finger as a child's blood is offered to the gods. These communal rituals are both celebration and reinforcement, reminding everyone that they are part of something larger, something sacred, something unbreakable. Yet, even within this lively tapestry, tensions simmer beneath the surface. Rival families eye each other warily, whispers of accusations of witchcraft circulate in dark corners, and the memory of past betrayals lurks behind every smile. You realize that these gatherings are both a refuge and a battleground, a place where alliances are forged and broken in the blink of an eye. Your role in all of this is complex. You are both observer and participant, a healer, a confidant, sometimes a priest. The community looks to you for reassurance, for protection, for signs that the divine favor still rests upon them. But they also watch you closely, questioning your motives, your methods, your loyalty. Some see you as a savior, others as a threat. Every glance, every whispered prayer, every offer of bread or wine carries a weight, a silent test of trust. You feel the subtle shifts in their attitudes, the way a nod or a frown can change the course of your day. They may whisper, "Does he truly have the god's favor, or is he just another visitor bringing curses in disguise?" Their doubts are as palpable as the smell of burnt offerings lingering in the air. And yet, amidst the suspicion and the rivalry, life persists in its beauty. Small, intimate moments that remind you of what makes human connection so precious. You see a mother gently adjusting her child's linen, her touch tender despite the hardships. You notice an old man sharing a story, his voice trembling but full of warmth. You feel the warmth of a shared meal, the laughter of friends after a long day, the simple comfort of a hand held in reassurance. These are the threads that hold the fabric of society together, more fragile than the stone temples, yet more vital than any ritual. In the end, you realize that even in a world woven with fear and suspicion, human relationships are what give this life meaning. They are the quiet acts of kindness, the stolen moments of love, the unspoken bonds that survive through hardship and hope alike. These connections aren't just the glue that keeps society intact, they are the fire that makes life worth living in a world that seems so often on the brink of falling apart. And as you move from one gathering to the next, from one whispered secret to another, you understand that these bonds are what make the chaos bearable. The gentle, unwavering pulse of the human heart amid the shadows. The light is dim, flickering from a nearby oil lamp or a cluster of candles, casting gentle shadows that dance along the uneven surface. The air is filled with a medley of scents, mild broth simmering softly, the smoky aroma of dried fish, the sharp tang of vinegar, and the earthy aroma of herbs crushed between fingers. It's a smell that gently pulls at your appetite, hinting at the stories and routines woven into every meal. As you settle, you notice the textures, rough, terracotta bowls, the uneven surface of a loaf of bread with a thick crust that's cracked like a puzzle, wooden spoons worn smooth from years of use, and a cup of metal that cools your hand, promising a sip of something fermented, or perhaps just water with a faint, muddy taste. Today's menu is simple, yet, in its simplicity, it reveals the fabric of daily life. For the common folk, it's a humble porridge of grains and legumes, what they might call a pottage, thick and hearty, served in a battered trenches of bread that doubles as plate and utensil. You see a chunk of coarse bread, perhaps made from rye or barley, its surface rough and cracked, ready to be dipped or torn apart. A wedge of firm cheese, salty and aged, sits beside a handful of boiled eggs, their shells cracked just enough to see the pale, tender flesh inside. On certain days, a piece of salted fish or dried meat might be added, its salty flavor intensified by the smoke that still lingers in the air. A handful of onions or garlic are scattered across the table, their pungent aroma standing out like a bold signature in this humble feast. The beverage is often as modest as the meal, perhaps a weak ale, cloudy and slightly sour, or plain water tasting faintly of soil, but cold enough to refresh the throat. Sometimes a cup of sour wine, fermented from leftover grapes or apples, offers a faint sweetness amid the sourness, a small consolation amid austerity. In contrast, the tables of the wealthier are laden with more elaborate fare, roasted meats, perhaps a game bird or a roasted duck, their skins crisp and golden, fragrant with exotic spices like pimenta or saffron. Fruits, dried dates, figs, or figs soaked in honey add a touch of sweetness, their colors vibrant against the more muted tones of everyday fare. Richer wines flow in goblets carved from stone or glass, their deep hues and complex aromas a testament to the status of those at the top of the social ladder. But even here, the scene is rooted in ritual. Before the first bite, a small prayer or gesture of thanks, an offering to the gods for the bounty, a nod to tradition. Hands are washed carefully in a basin of cold water, sometimes scented with herbs or flower petals, an act that separates the sacred from the mundane, a moment of reverence amid the chaos of the marketplace or the crowded home. The order of service is strict. The host or the eldest begins, offering a blessing or a toast, then passing dishes with measured politeness, all under the watchful eyes of social hierarchy. The rich and the poor alike understand the importance of restraint. No elbows on the table, no loud chatter during the prayer. Each movement deliberate, each morsel measured. Meals are not just about filling stomachs, they're a stage for status, a silent performance of social order. You might notice the way a noble's servant carefully measures out a portion of wine for their master, while a commoner lifts a bowl with both hands, eager and unrestrained. The leftover scraps, bones, crusts, vegetable peels, are often saved or given to animals, a reminder of the scarcity that haunts even the most abundant tables. Sometimes the bread is torn into tiny pieces, shared among children and elders alike, a symbol of community and survival. Other times the crumbs are swept aside, discarded with quiet indifference, a testament to the relentless hunger that never quite leaves. The hunger in this world sharpens the senses, making every flavor, every aroma more intense, more vivid. A simple piece of bread becomes a treasure, a sliver of cheese, a feast, and a sip of weak ale, a moment of fleeting pleasure. The act of eating is a ritual, an acknowledgement of life's fleeting nature, and the effort to find joy where you can. After the last crumb is cleared away, the town or village begins to breathe again. The marketplace quiets, the shadows lengthen, and the evening calls out to music, laughter, and small acts of defiance against the coming night. You can almost hear the distant hum of voices rising in song, a fiddle's faint tremor echoing through the alleyways, or the clatter of tavern mugs as friends toast to survival. The night is a promise of stories, of shared memories, of returning tomorrow for another simple, sacred meal. And perhaps, amid all the hardship, there's a quiet reassurance that in these moments around the table, human life persists, slow, steady, and defiantly warm. The air is thick with the scent of warm beer, mingling with the dampness of wet sawdust and the faint aroma of burning herbs carried on the breeze. The muffled murmur of voices rises and falls like a gentle tide, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter, some genuine, others hiding a hint of nervousness beneath the surface. You move softly through the crowd, feeling the uneven cobblestones beneath your sandals, the roughness of the pavement grounding you as the city breathes around you. Ahead, the tavern beckons, a humble building with a dark, weathered facade, its door creaking softly as it opens to reveal a space alive with movement. Inside, the air is warm and dense, filled with the dusty scent of old wood and spilled ale. The benches are uneven, their wooden planks worn smooth by countless shoulders and elbows. A barrel-shaped table in the corner hosts a game of dice, small, carved objects that tumble and bounce, promising fleeting luck or crushing disappointment. The dice roll with a soft clatter, sounding like the promise of fortune, and falling just as often like a failed bet, landing with a dull thud akin to a late bill arriving at the end of the month. You notice the players' faces, some eager, others resigned, eyes flickering between the roll and the rising hopes or sinking despair. The chatter rises in a chorus of stories, exaggerated tales of heroism, misfortune, and foolishness. A man slaps a hand on the table, knocking over his mug in his enthusiasm, the sound echoing like a minor thunderclap. The mugs themselves are simple, battered and tin, with the faint dent of many years' worth of contact, each clink a reminder of shared moments, victories, losses, and camaraderie. Someone strums a rudimentary lute, its strings trembling under a calloused finger, while a woman next to him hums a tune, off-key but warm, like a fire that refuses to go out. The melody is rough, full of rough edges, but it resonates through the room, echoing the collective heartbeat of those gathered. Outside, the street is alive with motion. Children chase each other, their laughter high and unrestrained, weaving between the legs of adults who share their own stories and worries. You see a group of men attempting a clumsy dance, feet stomping in time to a tambourine's beat, sweat beading on their foreheads. Their steps are simple, yet each movement is a small act of defiance against the darkness creeping at the edges of their world. You might even join in, the rhythm pulling you into the circle, a slow, steady pulse that masks the tremor of underlying fears. The music and the dance are both wind and anchor, lifting spirits while reminding everyone of the fragile line between joy and chaos. In a corner, a makeshift stage hosts a moral play, an exaggerated story of virtue and vice, performed with simple costumes and exaggerated gestures. The actors, some dressed in ragged cloaks, others in patched tunics, enact scenes of morality, of divine miracles, and of human folly. The audience watches quietly, some with giggles, others with reverent silence. The performance is a mirror of their lives, full of hope, sprinkled with superstition, and tinged with the awareness that these stories can shift in an instant. You catch the faint scent of candelabra wax and burning herbs used to ward off evil spirits, reminders that even in celebration they keep a wary eye on the unseen shadows. Festivals like these are woven into the fabric of the city's life, marking the changing seasons and sacred days. The air is thick with the aroma of roasted grains and sweetened bread as processions wind through the streets, carrying flickering candles and fragrant clusters of herbs. The scent of beeswax and herbs fills the night, mixed with the faint, smoky tang of incense from nearby temples or household shrines. People march in order, their robes fluttering, their steps echoing with purpose. Sometimes a flag or a banner, brightly colored with painted symbols, stirs in the breeze, a silent call to the divine or to community. Yet beneath the warmth and laughter, shadows lurk. You see the flagellants, those penitents who march in solemn procession, their whips cracking like thunder, their faces set with a mixture of devotion and desperation. Their presence is a reminder that even amidst the festivities, fears of divine punishment still haunt daily life. Occasionally, a preacher's voice cuts through the night, sermons that echo in the dark, warnings of omens and superstitions that dictate when to dance, when to stay silent, when to fear. Eyes follow the flagellants, some filled with awe, others with suspicion, as they enact their painful prayers beneath flickering lanterns. In these moments, the line between celebration and superstition blurs, and you sense the delicate balance between hope and dread, an age-old dance that keeps the community tethered to its beliefs. From your vantage point, you observe the social fabric woven tighter in the glow of the festival. The respected elders, with their lined faces and steady gazes, nod approvingly at the spectacle, their eyes reflecting both pride and caution. A neighbor approaches, whispering a quick request for advice, perhaps about a bad dream, or a curse that lingers in the night. You gently touch the edge of the building's wall, a familiar gesture to ward off ill fortune, your fingertips feeling the roughened surface, grounding yourself amid the swirl of sights and sounds. As the night unfolds, you feel the mixture of raucous laughter and quiet anxiety, an echo of the perennial tension between human longing for joy and the ever-present shadow of mortality. The music swells and quiets, the crowd's movements slow and hurried, as if trying to outrun the darkness looming just beyond the candlelight. The bell, or the distant chime of a temple's bell, reminds you that everything, festivals, laughter, even life itself, are transient. The dance, the song, the prayers, they all echo the same truth, that all things, no matter how bright or fleeting, must eventually give way to silence. When the last song fades and the lanterns dim, the night responds with a gentle tolling of a distant bell, an acknowledgement that every celebration bears its own quiet toll. The city, alive with memories and hopes, whispers softly, everything begins and ends, and in the middle, human beings find their rhythm, dancing on the edge of the unknown, embracing the fleeting moments of life while the shadows still watch. In the quiet of a humble chamber, a midwife's hands are warm and steady, wrapping the tiny body in a coarse yet comforting cloth. A splash of warm water, a whisper of prayer, and the little one is pressed close, cheeks pink in the flickering light of a single candle. The air is thick with the scent of soap made from earthy herbs, mingled with the faint aroma of milk and a hint of dried flowers tucked nearby, reminders of life's simple, sacred continuity. That first cry, small and tentative, rings out like a tiny bell, an echo of hope amid the fragile shadows of mortality. You sense the fleeting miracle, life beginning anew, each heartbeat a prayer, each breath a promise that the cycle persists, quiet but unyielding. Next, you witness the union of souls, an alliance sealed with simple gestures that carry weight beyond words. At the threshold of a small chapel, or beneath the open sky, two hands meet, grasped tightly, as if holding the very fabric of their future. A ribbon or strip of cloth is tied around their joined fingers, a symbol of unity, while bread and salt are offered, gifts that speak of sustenance and enduring bonds. A brief blessing, a gentle music played on a lute or flute, and the community gathers as silent witnesses to this sacred act. The air is filled with the scent of baked bread, warm and yeasty, mingling with the faint aroma of herbs used in the blessing. It's a moment of shared hope, a promise that life's journey continues, woven into the tapestry of generations. Then comes the work that passes from hand to hand, an inheritance of tradition, a craft carried through time. An elder's fingers trace the grain of a carved object, worn smooth by countless years of use. A child's small hand learns to shape a clay vessel, guided by stories whispered by grandparents. The familiar weight of a tool, perhaps a spindle, a loom, or a simple knife, connects you to ancestors, each carrying their own silent stories. The air is tinged with the scent of wood shavings, the faint tang of oil, and the warmth of shared labor. These objects, whether a woven cloth, a carved figurine, or a treasured keepsake, are more than material. They are echoes of lives, of lessons passed down, of love embedded in every detail. Each generation adds its touch, building a bridge that sustains the cycle through quiet, uncelebrated moments. As time flows, you come face to face with the inevitable, the shadow of illness, the weight of farewell. A simple bed, draped with coarse linen, becomes a resting place for someone no longer able to fight the silent advance of disease. The faint scent of herbs, the touch of unguents, ointments of oil, wax, or blessed water are part of the last rites. Murmured prayers, soft and measured, seek divine mercy, a quiet hope that even in passing there is dignity. When plague or pestilence strikes, the rituals are hurried, the silence heavy with unspoken fears. No full rites or grand ceremonies, just a swift anointing, a whispered plea, and a community holding its collective breath as life quietly slips away. If you are a healer or a witness, you feel the deep sadness, the dignity in the effort to soothe, even as helplessness seeps into your bones. Each farewell is a reminder that life, fragile and fleeting, is a gift that must be treasured, even in its final moments. Then, in the stillness that follows, the city's heartbeat shifts toward remembrance. A slow, somber bell tolls, marking the passage of another soul. A procession moves quietly through the streets, cloaked figures carrying a simple bier, their footsteps falling in unison on cold earth. Candles flicker, wax dripping in slow tears, casting shadows on faces etched with grief and reverence. The scent of cypress and incense mingles in the air, reminders of the sacred journey beyond this life. Graves are simple, discreet, often shared in times of hardship, their boundaries unmarked but remembered in prayer. Names are spoken softly at the family table, offerings made of bread and wine, a final act of remembrance that sustains the memory of those lost. These moments, both somber and sacred, are woven into the fabric of daily life, a testament to the understanding that life's cycle is both a beginning and an end, intertwined in the divine rhythm of existence. In this quiet reflection, you see how the cycle of life is woven into every corner of a community's being, birth and death, promises and farewells, each moment a thread in the great tapestry of human experience. The simple act of a child's first cry, the exchange of vows beneath the sky, the last breath taken in dignity, these are the quiet miracles repeated daily across generations, reminding us that beauty also resides in finitude. The candle's flame flickers low, the shadows grow longer. You close your eyes and listen to the gentle breathing of the world outside your window. The city continues softly, endlessly, whispering its ancient truth. Life begins, life promises, life departs. And in that gentle fading light, you find a quiet comfort, an understanding that even in endings there is a sacred continuity. Now, as your breath slows and your mind drifts into sleep, you thank this journey through the cycle, knowing that in every farewell, in every new beginning, life's enduring miracle persists.